Hello everyone, Emerson here. This is another Tracks VR lap guide. This is for the final round of our 2024 Spring Youth League. We are in beautiful Monterey, California, racing at Laguna Seca. A bit more of a famous track than some of the other tracks that we've visited this season. Of course, this is home to the famous corkscrew. Lots of people find that to be the trickiest corner of the track. I actually find turn 6, which comes slightly before the corkscrew, to actually be trickier, and I'll explain why as we do the lap guide. Anyways, we're going to start our engine. We're going to do a quick little example of the pit exit. Out of our pit stall, down pit road. Pit lane speed limit is the usual 80k here. Couple notes on the pit exit here I'll make right after I point out the pit exit line, where you can turn off your limiter right in line with these green lights right here. They might not be green depending on track conditions, of course, but that's where you can disable your limiter. You can actually accelerate up this hill at that point, but don't get in going too fast. I will tell you why in a moment. But first things first, some of you, especially those of you that might be more familiar with the Forza games, when you exit the pit lane, please, please, please do not cross this row of pylons onto track here. This is not the correct way to exit the pits. This is one of my pet peeves with Forza Motorsports. If you are exiting the pits that way, this is the fastest part of the track, and where I'm currently sitting is the racing line in turn 1. Cars are coming up over that hill. They can't see you. They are at full speed, and they're going to run into the back of you. Penalties will be handed out if you exit the pit lane this way. Please stay to the left of that blue line when you're exiting the pits. Just keep that in mind. Anyways, back to the correct pit exit. You're on the right-hand side of this blue line. You can actually accelerate through here, like I was saying, but it is fairly slow. Let's get that speed limiter off. Fairly slow around through here. This is actually on the inside of turn 2. Fairly narrow. Some people find it a little tricky, but just play it safe. It's not too hard, just nice and slow through here. No, obviously not this slow. This is just an example. When you actually exit the track, you'll be happy to see that there is no actual blend line from this point on to be wary of. The racing line for people coming out of turn 2 is actually going to be on the opposite side of the track from you, so you know you're in the clear. And when you come out of the pit lane, you're not going to want to cross to the right anyways. You're going to want to stay to the left. So if you do this pit exit correctly, it's actually one of the safer pit exits. I absolutely love it for that reason. Anyways, we're going to continue this lap. I'll cut to the end where I start my first example lap here. Okay, starting our example lap, we're actually going to start from before the final corner. The final corner of this track is turn 11. The reason we're starting here is because, a couple of reasons actually. This is the slowest corner on the track, and your exit out of this corner is critical to a good lap time. The exit is far more important than the entrance. When you're braking for the final corner here, you can brake around this number 2 sign. You can probably even safely brake a little bit before that just to ensure you get a good exit. I'll also point out on the end of the formation lap for our rolling start, green flag on this track comes out early. It might even come out before turn 11. So be ready to go green very early, long before you get to the start-finish line. In real life, that is where they call green on this track. Anyways, so turn 11. You're going to use this curb on the inside here, but not that red sausage curb. That red sausage curb, there's one of those at the apex of almost every corner, though, so it can be very useful. But you want to be getting a late apex on this corner here, basically alongside this, or better yet, just at the very tail end of this here. Slowest corner of the track, you're going to be down in first gear. Squeeze that power on gently, because the low gear in first gear is going to very easily get rear wheel spin. I see people all the time spin out here and go into the wall on the left hand side. But if you get the power down correctly, nice and smoothly, don't get that rear wheel spin, you're going to come all the way out to the right-hand side as I stall the engine. Hopefully that's not too much of a common trait on this lap guide. This curb on the right-hand side is where you want to be. You can actually even use that AstroTurf on the right-hand side a little bit. Keep in mind it is going to be a bit slippery. Full throttle down the straightaway. Technically not on your flying lap yet at this point. The start-finish line is underneath this pedestrian bridge right here. There's some marshals and a marshal station. That's where you'll see them waving the flags. This line here is your start-finish line. You're coming full throttle into turn 1. Turn 1 is hardly worth calling a turn at all because it's basically part of the straightaway. Full throttle over the crest of the hill. You're actually going to be getting pretty close to pit exits. The pit exit lane here. Again, just to reiterate, that's why I don't want people coming out of the pits to coming onto track here, because you're coming full throttle to here. This is where the racing line is. You're going to be nice and close to that, and you're going to be coming back out wide here into the Andretti hairpin. It's actually turn 2, but effectively turn 1 here. Braking point for this corner is the number 3 board. These your car's not going to go through them. They are physical things. If they get hit and knocked out of the way, you obviously can't use that as your braking marker at any point. Not your braking point, but your visual reference for your braking point. But if that goes missing, there is very luckily a nice blue stripe on the ground immediately afterwards, so you can use that as a backup. The Andretti hairpin, turn number 2. On Laguna Seca's website, they have a written lap guide of this track. They describe this corner as a single apex corner. I wholeheartedly disagree. You can take it as a single apex corner, but myself and numerous other lap guides that I've seen for this track treat this as a double apex corner. I'll tell you how to take it as a single apex corner in case that happens to work better for you, but trust me, you're going to be better off doing a double apex on this corner. For the double apex, you're going to be turning in fairly early. You're going to aim for that red sausage curb on the inside. If you're doing the late apex, you're going to be staying wide a little bit here, leaving your inside lane completely open for people to overtake you. So another good reason why it's better to do the double apex. Apexing here, you're probably going to get down to preferably second gear before you get to this point. But you're going to be alongside the sausage curb and all the way out to the middle of the track here, which is going to be the slowest point of your trip around this corner. Coming back in for your second apex, if you're doing the single apex line, you're going to be apexing about here as well. This is the more important apex of the two. But apexing right at the tail end of the sausage curb, maybe even right between that and where it changes to just gray concrete. And that's where you're going to be coming up close to the pit exit lines. Your car is naturally going to want to flow out to the right-hand side, all the way out to here. Probably going to get onto this rumble strip or this curbing right at this point here. And that's good because you're out of the way of people coming out of the pit lane, and you're going to go around them back to the left-hand side. And you can actually ride this curb a little bit here. And right as the curb starts to end, it changes to gray concrete. That you're going to be turning into this corner. Third gear corner, you're probably very likely going to be hitting fourth gear before that corner, so down to third. Hitting this red sausage curb, not hitting the sausage curb, but you're hitting the apex at this point. But I will point out one extra thing here. There is a bump on this version of the track that you're going to want to watch out for. You're likely only going to run into this situation on the formation lap, because in the race it's so far off the racing line, I doubt you're going to hit it. And hitting it at speed, you're probably not even going to notice it. But just to give you some warning, there is a fairly nasty bump right there on the track. I figured I'd just state that just so you know that bump is there. As you come out of turn 3, you're going to come all the way up to the left-hand side. You can actually get your left 2 wheels right on top of the curb, all the way down to turn 4. You're going to get up to 4th gear as you come underneath the pedestrian bridge here. Turning in at the end, you're not going to brake for this corner. You're probably not even going to fully lift off the throttle. You're probably going to do about a half lift off the throttle. You can actually get back on the throttle fairly early. You're basically just lifting off a little bit to get turned in, and then on the throttle coming out very fast coming out. Your back end might slip and slide just a little bit, but you're going to come all the way out to the left-hand side. Make use of this curb on the left. It's very forgiving. Coming into turn 5, this is a fairly fast corner. It's a very fun corner. Might be some passing opportunities into this corner here. Braking after the mother's sign at the number 2 sign on the right-hand side. If that number 2 goes missing, there's also a white painted line on the concrete wall to the right, but somewhere between that white line and that truck, obviously. But if no one hits that number 2, you can use the number 2. Downshifting down to 3rd gear for this corner, you'll notice that this corner is quite banked. That's actually a pretty common trend on this track. There's quite a few semi-banked corners on this track. Apexing right after that little red sausage curve on the left. Accelerating out, you want to get a good apex coming out here, a good late apex so you can prioritize your speed coming up the hill, because it's uphill from here all the way to the corkscrew. You're going to come out towards this blue and white curbing on the right-hand side. Use the curbing at your own risk, however. But you'll notice it slants downwards as you get to the curb, with the suspension loaded on the right-hand side. As you come out of that fast left-hander, you might notice the undercarriage of cars scraping on the peak between the curbing and the track surface. If that happens, you're basically bottoming out the car. You're going to have a hard time bringing the car back to the left onto the track, which is going to hurt your lap time a little bit. Coming up into turn number 6, this is the corner that I like the absolute least on this track. It's not too terribly hard, but you really have to be precise with this one. Try to avoid passing into this corner. You cannot go too wide at speed to this corner. If you're feeling brave and take a pass, make sure you do it clean, because if you don't do it clean, someone's going to crash, probably both of you. Anyways, you're going to be braking a little bit for this corner. I take this corner in 4th gear. There's a white line on the left there. You can probably use that to approximate your turn-in point for this corner. Another banked corner. It's banked the most right at the apex of the corner, right down on the inside. You can actually use that to help slingshot your car through this corner all the way up towards turn 7 and towards the corkscrew. Accelerating out in 4th gear, full throttle up the hill. You can actually use a little bit of this curbing and run off here. It's fairly forgiving. Making your way up this hill, it's fairly steep uphill, so that previous corner, your exit speed is critical. Otherwise, you're going to really be hampered coming up the steep uphill part here. As you approach the corkscrew, you're going to want to be on the left-hand side here. You can actually get on top of that curb, maybe even onto the concrete a little bit. Use that concrete on the left at your own discretion as well. If you use too much of it, you will get a track cut warning. You're going to be braking. This is a tricky braking zone. Braking after you come off of that runoff area on the left, halfway between there and the number 2 sign on the right. You're aiming to the right because the track bends to the right ever so slightly as you come over the hill here. You're going to be hard on the brakes initially. As you come over the crest of the hill, take note when I do my flying lap, I'll be feathering the brakes a little bit just to avoid a lockup to the best of my ability. Back hard on the brakes a little bit more to get yourself slowed down. Downshift down to 2nd gear. You can take this corner in 1st gear. It'll actually help your turn in a little bit in 1st gear. But if you do, you're going to want to get back up to 2nd gear immediately, because if you're trying to accelerate out of the corkscrew in 1st gear, you're going to get some rear wheel spin, which can make it a little tricky. So 2nd gear for the exit of the corkscrew. Anyways, turning in, getting this curbing on the left for your apex. You're going to basically be aiming for those 2 little oak trees on the left. I believe in real life that oak tree is a little bit further to the right. Should actually be where the flatbed of that truck with the crane is. So aim for the flatbed of the truck. Once you're aimed, your wheel can be centered, and you're going to come over here as the track falls away from you underneath. Very steep downhill, as you notice here, and notice how that lines me up perfectly with the curve on the inside. Right now my front right wheel isn't even touching the ground, even at this slow speed. That shows how much elevation change there is here. You can basically be on the throttle before the apex of that second right-hander of the corkscrew. On the throttle coming out here, underneath this WeatherTech sign, you're going to keep yourself to the right-hand side. I keep about a car width on the right-hand side of me. Treat this corner as if it's going to be a flat-out corner. Enter it as if you're going to take it flat out. You likely won't be able to take it flat out unless the track really gets rubbered in. But staying wide fairly late, you want to get a fairly late apex here. Full throttle coming into the corner, turning in such a way that's going to aim you towards the curbing on the left there. This is the point here where you can be modulating your throttle. You're probably not going to come all the way off the throttle, but just feathering that throttle, coming off of it just enough to get yourself to the curbing on the inside here where this lighter pavement is as well. A fairly aggressive sausage curb on the inside as usual. But back on the throttle coming out, you're going to come all the way out to the curbing on the right. It's very easy to overcook that and spin out into the runoff area on the right here. But if you play your cards right, you'll be full throttle coming out of there and able to ease yourself back to the left, looking for the blue and white curbing over here. Start braking right at about the midpoint here. You're going to be in 5th gear. You're going to downshift to 4th here. This is a fairly fast corner. It's also banked quite a bit. Coming down to the inside to apex right after that sausage curb. Fairly fast through here, actually, all the way out to the left. But again, there's a bit of a rumble strip on the left here you can make use of. Don't be scared of this corner. At some point, I'm sure someone's going to end up in this gravel over here. It's fairly easy to just end up on that gravel and make your way back onto track, mostly unscathed. Of course, it's going to hurt your lap time, but it likely won't wreck your race. Be brave with this corner. If I do see people abusing the track limits, of course, I might instigate some penalties if needed, but I want you guys to push hard through here. It's a fairly easy corner. Coming up to the final corner, the slowest corner of the lap, just to remind you, you would benefit from braking early rather than late here. That number 2 sign is a fairly reliable braking point. Down, all the way down to 1st gear. Basically turning in right at the end of that. You can kind of follow this lighter colored pavement around this corner. Just reiterating this corner, apexing nice and late, easing into the throttle gradually because it's very slippery if you're on the throttle too soon because you're at such a low speed. Using the curb and maybe even the AstroTurf on your corner exit down the straightaway to start a flying lap again. Okay, starting our flying lap here. I'll start walking you through it as we come up to turn 11 here. Ooh, off on turn 10. Braking just before turn 11 here at the 2 sign, down to 1st gear. Nice late apex, squeezing that throttle on so you don't get too much wheel spin coming onto the front straightaway. Full speed down the straightaway, nice and close to the pit exit line here, but not crossing it. Out to the right, braking at the 3 sign, turning in a bit early to set up that double apex out to the middle. And getting our 2nd apex nice and late, easing into the throttle. Briefly up to 4th gear, but we're going to get back down to 3rd for turn 3. Easing into the throttle, following the curbing on the left-hand side. 4th gear, off throttle, back on the throttle coming through the corner. Get back to the right-hand side to set yourself up for turn 5. Braking at the number 2 sign, down to 3rd gear. Nice and easy onto the throttle as you come out. Not using too much of that curb on the right. We're going to downshift down to 4th gear in turn 6, slingshotting ourselves through, using a little bit of that curb on the right, making our way back to the left-hand side of the track, set ourselves up to over the crest, braking, but feathering the brakes over the crest, back on the brakes, into the corkscrew, easing into the power as we come down, full throttle as we go in, feathering that throttle to make sure we hit that apex, full throttle coming out, down to 4th gear through turn 10, getting that apex there. Back to the right, braking a little bit early for the final corner to make sure we get a nice good exit onto the front straight. Full throttle down the front straightaway, and our lap time is going to be 120.5. I imagine even with the weight ballast, because you guys are so fast that you guys are still going to be hitting those 120 lap times. But either way, a very, very fun track. Okay, for the pit entry, you're going to come around turn 10 as normal, because turn 10 naturally brings you out to the left-hand side of the track, and that's where the pit entrance is. Before I go into the pit exit, I will point out here that I don't actually know where the pit timing line is. It's not where I would have expected it to be, at least it's not marked. However, that is not important whatsoever, because if you're speeding into the pits, you are going to crash. But you'll notice there's these cones on the pit entrance here. There is a line there, but that does not seem to function as the pit entrance line where the speed needs to be below 80. But I would recommend braking right between these first two cones. You can safely get down slow enough without crashing if you start braking right inside this box here, but you're coming down into here. I think where the pit lane technically starts is right in this very tight corner somewhere in here. But like I said, if you're coming in at 80 kilometers here, you are going to crash into that wall. Don't forget, turn 11 is a first gear corner. And we are on the inside of turn 11. That means that this corner into the pit lane is even tighter. So you're going to come around here, nice and slow. At this point, I would actually recommend turning on your pit lane limiter right at that braking point. But at this point, you really want to make sure it's on by here, because you're going to be accelerating out of here unless your pit box happens to be the first one here. The pit boxes in this track start from this end of the pit lane and head towards the start-finish line rather than the other way around, so keep that in mind, especially if you're following someone into the pit lane, that they might be darting off to the left to get this first pit stall right here. Anyway, so that wraps up the lap guide. I'm looking forward to this race, guys. The previous race was a ton of fun. You had me and everyone else in the room on the edge of our seats. It was a wild roller coaster of a ride, start to finish, and I think that this race is going to be nothing less. It's going to be exciting. There's a couple people tied for points going into this race, so there's a lot on the line. And get some practice in. There's tons of sims that have this track. You're not going to see it in the F1 game, obviously, but if you have some racing games in your library, boot them up, see if Laguna Seca is in there, and get some laps in. Even if it's not in a Formula car, just familiarize yourself with the track. Thanks for watching the lap guide, and we will see you on Wednesday where we wrap up this championship. Looking forward to it. We'll see you then.